It's the mindset, it's the will to fight, it's the willingness to engage no matter the circumstance. It's your ability to really accept reality as it is, knowing that if it gets that bad, you're gonna do whatever it takes to mitigate that threat to you and your family.
The information in this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes. Our informational content cannot address all dangerous situations and cannot guarantee your survival or prevent injuries when the unexpected happens. The decision to carry a firearm, either for recreation or for personal defense, carries the risk and potential for injury and/or death. Therefore, it is advised that you seek out and acquire proper training before using a firearm or any firearm-related product.
What are some self-defense techniques?
What would happen if there was a global internet outage?
What should I do if I hear shots ringing out?
Or what I should do if there's a major terrorist attack?
What should I have? What's the best?
What should I do?
What does that look like?
What would you recommend?
Is there anything I could do?
All right, guys, welcome back to Dangerous Questions, an Ironclad original. We are going to talk about threats that might not be so obvious in some situations. And it's something to be aware of. One thing that I've really been contemplating lately is the fact that awareness is probably one of the most important parts of going out and to identify any threat, even to our own personal lives about the way we live, health and well-being. That is a threat. If we don't eat a certain way or we get sedentary or something happens, that's a threat to our well-being. And ultimately what it takes is a level of humility to identify what we can be better at. How does that translate to physical threats that are in the world? Well, we have to have the humility to know that we got to go do more research or think about it more or train more or expose ourselves to these weaknesses or areas of weakness to be able to make them better. I think you'll be able to understand me a little bit more as I explain the details in this episode. Let's get to the first question. In the show, you've talked a lot about prepping for physical threats, guns, knives, break-ins, etc. But what if the real predator is the one who disables your home system without stepping foot on your lawn? How do you defend against that? So essentially what I'm getting out of this question is it's more than a physical threat. In some cases, if somebody comes up to my door, they kick my bedroom door and I'm like, okay, I know what I'm working with. It's very clear. There's a dude that's bad sitting there with a gun in his hand. I know what I need to do. This is approaching things from a little bit more of a gray area. And this specific one is an alarm system. It disables your home system. So your alarm system is now disabled by somebody that's on the outside. So with the threat of cyber, the more intelligent people get, hackers, this is possible. And so this is, again, thinking proactively. When I think about the layers of my home, okay, this is the foot of my bed. Here's where my dogs are. Here's where my gun is. These are the sensors that I have on my door. This is how my alarm system is connected to the alert system. Is it hardwired? Does it have a cell phone backup? Is it connected to the Wi-Fi? Most of everybody's systems these days are hooked up to Wi-Fi. Pretty plain and simple. Everybody's got Ring or Blink or whatever the heck you're buying on Amazon, and it's super easy. You cut the power, you got no security, right? If you don't have some type of a backup or something that people can't hack into easy, it's just something to consider. Now, that's just very, one-dimensional as far as cyber threats go, but let me get to the essence of what I really think the question is here. And that's, how do you protect against these things that are unforeseen, against a more sophisticated attacker? And ultimately, it comes down to being predictive, thinking through these scenarios on a deeper level. And look, if you can't come up with them on your own, this is where consultation or getting a mentor or getting somebody that knows this stuff in and out, well, you might have to pay for that. Yeah, sure. But you can do a lot of the research on your own too. And it really does come down to thinking through these scenarios happening, because if somebody disables my home system without stepping foot on my lawn, okay, well, what's the threat now? If I've thought through that and I did everything that I can to stop that threat from happening reasonably, and I did my homework and I at least put a little bit of effort into it because it's a concern of mine. And again, if you're thinking about something, there's a reason you're thinking about it, so do something about it, take action. But ultimately, if I exhausted all those options, it does come down to how well I put these other things into place and the reasonability of me doing them. And again, even if you disable my system, you still have to step foot onto my property and deal with me with a gun and whatever else you plan on doing. So there's a follow-up to this eventually, but we need to be reasonable about what we're thinking about.
Recently, whistleblowers have been called before Congress to answer a question that could literally change human history. Is the U.S. military in possession of actual alien technology? On the new 4-part Change Agents Special Series Black Project, an Ironclad original, we examine the history of military research into anti-gravity, strange special access projects, and the work being done by private contractors like Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works to try to understand if UFOs are real, or if the military is hiding a breakthrough that could potentially alter our world. Stay tuned until the end for a preview of the next episode. Become an Ironclad YouTube member to binge all 4 episodes of Change Agents Black Project on launch day. Otherwise, catch new episodes weekly. Join now, YouTube at This Is Ironclad.
All right, next question. What's your tactical plan when the threat isn't a stranger, but somebody you love? I think it's easy to act decisively when the threat is anonymous, someone breaking in, someone charging you on the street, or whatever. But what if it's your partner in the middle of some type of breakdown, your sibling, your child? Do you freeze? Do you fold? Or can you still move with precision, protect everyone in the room, including them, and not lose yourself in the process? What kind of mindset, training, and preparation actually gets you ready for that? Okay, this is obviously difficult. And I know there's even some people that have dealt with this in the past. And the last part of this question of what actually prepares you for this and what can you do, it doesn't really change. The level of training that I have, I would still want in these situations. In fact, I'm glad that I have the level of training that I have to deal with a situation like this, because if I have to go hands-on with somebody, or if it's a threat that's really, really close to me, I always use the example of my drunk uncle, right? If I have to deal with my drunk uncle, how am I going to deal with him, right? I don't want to stab him. I don't want to shoot him. I don't want to hurt him in any way more than I have to. So if I have to deal with a drunk uncle, then that's where jiu-jitsu is really, really, really handy. That's why I always talk about it, advocate for BJJ, because I can get up close, know how to control things, and be able to wrap you up and put you to sleep with very, very low impact, right? Maybe it's very dynamic and we end up tripping, or I go to throw your arm to the side and wrap you up to choke you out, but then we fall to the ground and he bumps his head on the fridge. I mean, at least that was better than having to do the alternative. And again, I know some of these situations can get very intense. Bottom line, get the training that you do need that's going to make you more confident in these situations. I always talk about, if a woman comes attacks me, I'm going to do everything that I possibly can to fend those attacks, right? Even if it's with the blade, I'm like, okay, I got to pass that, maybe do a little bit of hubud, redirect, grab, clear, control, crush, put her to sleep, maybe redirect the thing, pull the gun out of her hand, the blade out of her hand, put her down. I mean, I could probably do most of that without actually hurting somebody. That's the idea of becoming an asset. But let's back up even further than getting the right training and knowing how to do all that and redirect confidently. Because again, I want an asset to be able to do that. But if it's really somebody that you love and this could happen, really what are we doing beforehand, before it gets to this level? What are we doing to identify this level of behavior? Nobody really deserves to be in a situation like this. And I get it. There are the anomalies out there, mental illness or spiritual battles that people are going through that are very real and can manifest themselves out of what feels like nowhere sometimes. And I think that that's why being confident and being trained, one of the principles I talk about often is environment manipulation. And I'll go back to that here in a second. But what are we doing to identify this beforehand? Because a lot of this can be mitigated. If somebody has behavioral tendencies and they're violent and they're aggressive and you're seeing that, but you've never been hurt, okay, that's a clear indicator that you probably don't want to be in the same environment with that person when things get really bad. If that's your instinct and you're afraid, there's no reason that anybody should walk into their houses and feel that afraid, like something really bad could happen to you. That's not a safe place to be. So what are we doing beforehand to get the right help, to communicate this to the right people and to be able to start changing your life so that that's not an issue. Could the other things happen like I talked about? Sure. And that's why I'm just encouraging you guys to predict this, to see it before it happens, before it becomes a real problem. Don't be afraid to say something. If your instinct is saying like, look, this could become an issue with somebody that I live with or somebody that I love, you got to put the proper things in place. You got to take action. You got to do something. Get somebody else involved. Get the right advice. Don't do nothing. Now, if it is the type of mental illness or spiritual battle that manifests itself in a completely unpredictable manner and you could not control that, well, this is where environmental manipulation and having a little bit of training is going to go a long way. I'm going to use my environment as much as possible. If I got my drunk uncle trying to swing a baseball bat at my head, and I don't know, maybe that day I'm not feeling super confident in my ability to crash the gap and clear, control, and crush, and I forgot everything I ever learned, which would be a rare case, I would still use my environment, right? What can I use? I would use this desk or the bed or maybe something tall to use against them and crash in, or maybe just break contact completely and get out of there. Again, situations like this can be very difficult to deal with because we could talk about, well, now the children are here, or we have siblings, or there's something else going on that's in a much more difficult dynamic to involve yourself where, oh, I can't just run away because I have my younger brother here, or my child is sitting in the same room with this person that's really dealing with a spiritual battle. So you do have to understand that dynamic as well, is sometimes we can't just run away. We got to do everything we can, which is why predicting this stuff before it really gets bad is so important. So, I mean, if you're listening to this right now and you're in this type of situation, please don't do nothing. You know, if your instinct is telling you that things could go sideways, you're probably absolutely right. So do what it takes to prevent these things. And I know that there's some tough things out there and some tough situations, but if you have the opportunity to listen to this, you know, trust your gut on this. Don't wait till it's too late and you end up in a situation where it's really, really bad. That's the biggest part of this, is that you can prevent a lot of this from happening, but you have to make the choice to take action. All right, next question. Hey, Dom, I know you've covered home defense before. I've been thinking a lot about it, about building a safe room, stocking weapons, all of it. But at the end of the day, I keep wondering what actually protects you more. Is it the reinforced walls, the tools and weapons you've got on hand, or is it the mindset you bring into the fight? Like, if everything else fails, what's the thing that really keeps you alive? Okay, talked about a lot. Now, safe rooms, weapons, training, all that stuff, there is a level of priority, right? You're not going to do all of them at a snap of a finger, especially if you have all the money in the world and you can build the best safe room in the world. You still got to get to it eventually. And is that worth more than the training? You know, to me, no, it's not. I can't change the level of training that you have in an instant, but you can start working on it before something bad happens. And at the end of the day, I mean, you answered the question yourself. It's the mindset, it's the will to fight, it's the willingness to engage no matter the circumstance. It's your ability to really accept reality as it is, knowing that if it gets that bad, you're going to do whatever it takes to mitigate that threat to you and your family. You know, I often try to contrast and say, okay, that's why I always talk about the methodology in Dynamis and Crush Everything, is that will, train, equip, and engage, right? Will, train, equip. Or for you, it's this way. Will, train, equip, right? Will is my willingness, my mindset, the base foundation of everything else that it's predicated on. The training is next. If I have a guy over here that has an Iron Man suit, but he has no knowledge of how to use it, he has zero tactical know-how, and he has no mindset to implement all of it, it's just a fancy piece of metal at the end of the day that's not going to be implemented in the right way. Right? I'd much rather have the right mindset than the fancy Iron Man suit, right? Now work backwards. The training, okay? If I have a guy with great training and an Iron Man suit, but he has zero mindset to apply that training, what do I mean? The marksmanship to be able to hit a head-sized target at 20 yards, okay? I draw one shot, bang, I can hit it. I've got an Iron Man suit. I can do all those things accurately, but I have zero mindset and value and morals to understand, well, when do I apply that shot? Is it here? Is it here? Is it in the innocent guy or the really bad guy? You know, I don't really have the right mindset to apply that. So I'm kind of just a train wreck at the end of the day. That's all you're going to be, is you're going to be a liability. You're going to be a threat to yourself, to everybody else. So it all comes back to mindset. I would rather have the best mindset in the world and be dropped off naked in the woods to fend for myself with nothing else. I'll figure it out. With the right mindset, I can figure out anything else. It goes back to the last episode we did. I want the ability to know that I'm going to go in there and not fail. I want the ability to know I'm going to go in there and be able to adapt and have the will to fight. It's all these things built upon themselves. And then you give me the right training and the right gear, then I'm set up for success. Will, train, equip, then engage into whatever's going on. So mindset is the key. How do you develop that mindset? By doing more of what you're afraid of, by doing more of what is going to create resiliency and temperance and fortitude and the will to fight. That's really what it's going to come down to. This life's going to throw challenges at us from every direction, whether it's a physical challenge, a mental challenge, and we have to be able to fight through that no matter the circumstance. That was the questions for this episode, and we have one scenario breakdown that we're going to talk about. And I think there's a lot of value to this one, so let's roll it, see what we got here. It's in a convenience store setting. And again, I'm not sure about the title on there, but ultimately, this is a very common setting, okay? It almost looked like that was a blade or I don't know, it almost even looked like a stick. I'm not exactly sure what he pulled out, but look, the bottom line is he didn't address this woman that's standing there at all, and he didn't care that she was there. He didn't consider her a threat. He's coming in there to pull cash out of the cash register for whatever his motive is. I don't know. But let's pause here for a second, okay? Because he didn't address her and she realized that she was just standing there and nothing was happening to her, she was able to build confidence in herself. And honestly, at this point, to me, anybody watching this or listening to this, it was a false level of confidence because in the reality of the situation, the girl clearly didn't have any training. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't use your instinct when something bad is happening, but to me, the cash that this guy was coming in there to get, or whatever the case was, it wasn't worth what could have happened to her. If that was a blade and he decided, oh, you know what? I'm just going to swing around and cut your carotid artery. Now you're bleeding out on the floor for what? When you could have just pulled back, let the guy get his little Snickers bar and $100 and he would have been happy and walked out of there. It was not worth putting her life at risk of whatever could have happened next. You need to recognize that in yourself, especially because he didn't address her at all. It was a false sense of confidence. You really need to analyze, like, is this worth me getting wrapped up in this situation? Because you see, she's starting to put her hand on his arm and he's not really doing much about it. So what is she doing? She's like, oh, I can do something. I put my arm on him and he didn't do anything. And she keeps ramping that up again and again and again. He knows she's not a threat so much to the fact that he keeps just shaking her off and shaking her off. So she should have had the wherewithal to know that that was a situation she should have broke contact from. Whatever was going on in her mind, a false sense of confidence, the fact that she needed to do something, the fact that she wanted to be a hero, it just wasn't worth it, guys. Especially if you have children or anybody with you, break contact, put some distance in between you and them, and just let that play out a little bit and use some self-preservation. Because if it was a blade, or even if that guy decided to get extremely violent, then you save yourself a lot of trouble and potentially your life was on the line. Now, what are some nuances to this that we just can't tell the context of this video? Some nuances there are, well, let's say it's a small town, right? And it's at your local gas station that there's only one gas station in town and you're in there and she just came to pick up a drink for the day and a pack of gum. And the guy starts talking and she's like, wait a minute, that's Bobby from down the road. I know Bobby, I've served him dinner in my house. And she just decides to like, I'm not gonna let Bobby do this. And even the fact that he might recognize her and not actually know, she knows that he's not actually gonna do something to hurt her in a violent manner. Those are things that you'll never be able to tell from a video. And that's a possibility here. I'm not saying that that's the case, nor do I have the context, but I'm just saying when you're watching videos, you really have to take things with a grain of salt. But what can we learn from this video? Don't get wrapped up into something that's not worth it. If he's only going there for something small, de-escalate and avoid. That's why I always talk about our course, situational awareness, de-escalation, and avoidance. I want to avoid and de-escalate at every single cost possible because I don't know what the outcome could be. That guy could have had a gun in his jacket or a blade in his jacket. And if I can let him get away for a couple of $100, that's a win. That's an easy day. Hey, let's wrap that up later. And of course, if I'm in the line of fire and he comes in and I get ambushed by him and then he pushes me out of the way and I end up in between him and the cashier, well, then maybe I have to do something about it, about redirecting. My last point to this, without belaboring this too much. If you have the level of training, which clearly she doesn't, that's a little bit of a different story, right? If you get caught in this situation and you're confident enough to mitigate this, is it still worth a couple of $100? Probably not, but you have to use that discernment. At least don't engage if you're not confident that you can do this with protecting yourself. If that was a blade, okay, I'm confident enough that I can clear, control, crush the guy, wrap him up. Same thing I was talking about before, if it's somebody that you actually love. But if you don't have that high level of training and you're not being ambushed and your life isn't imminently being endangered, then you need to de-escalate and avoid and break contact. Please, listen to that, rewind this, play it again, because it's important to understand where you're going to fall in this situation. I'm never going to tell you to trump your own instincts when it's on the X, but it's something to consider. All right, that wraps up this episode of Dangerous Questions. Thank you again for all you guys' support. We appreciate it, and God bless you. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.
On the new episode of Black Project, a Change Agents special series. When a CIA agent and aerospace executive showed up unannounced at a Stanford professor's office with a very concerning request, it would send one of the world's leading scientists on a path to somewhere he never expected to be, on the hunt of a UFO crash retrieval site. Become an Ironclad YouTube member to binge all 4 episodes of Change Agents Black Project on launch day. Otherwise, catch new episodes weekly. Join now, YouTube at This Is Ironclad.